Welcome to My Planet Rocks. I'm Wyatt, and with the release of Power Up this week, I think you can take a wild guess. Who might be on this week's show? It is AC/DC's Brian Johnson. Not only do we have one of the biggest rock stars on the planet, but this week it's a bumper edition of the show. 2 whole hours of chat with Brian about the new album, history of the band, and your favourite AC/DC tracks, like this one. My Planet Rocks, with my guest this week, Brian Johnson. Brian, can you sum up 2020 in a few words so far?
Do you know, right at the start of the year, we went to shoot a video in Holland, you know, with the boys, you know, for Shot in the Dark. And we did a rehearsal there. It was fabulous. You know, we knew that we still had it. And then we flew home and the virus hit. And I just stopped with dead more tracks, as it did the rest of the world. So it was pretty nasty, but now I feel real happy that Sonny decided to release the album because I think it'll give the world a bit of a shot in the arm, you know, and I think it's a happy album, you know, and I think you can tell when you listen to it that we're just so happy to be back together again and performing, you know.
Going back 4 years, Cliff had retired. It seemed your ears had almost fallen off. What did you think at that point the next couple of years would have had in store for you?
Well, at the time, you know, I thought, that's it. I've had a good run. You know, hey, Brian, it's nothing terminal. There's people a lot worse off than you are, and in a worse situation. So, you know, thank your lucky stars that you did what you did and just get on with it. And that was basically what I did. You know, well, after a couple of months of sticking my head in a whiskey bottle, which sort of helped get through, numb the pain. And, you know, because it was, I had to stop doing what I loved and I had to stop doing it with the people that I loved. Or being with, you know, there was such a bond. And so, you know, I thought, gosh, I cannot see anything else happening. But, you know, I'll just get on with life, have some fun. And about 2 years later, thankfully, you know, Angus and Sonny and the management reached out and said, hey, listen, would you fancy doing an album? And, of course, I said to Angus, I said, you try and stop us. I said, of course I will. And then Cliff felt the same, you know, to get back with the boys, with me and Phil, and Angus and Stevie. And so that that was 2018, so that was great. That was a start, you know. We went to Vancouver and went in the studio there, teamed up with Brendan O'Brien again, the producer, who's brilliant, a great kid. And then Angus got out these songs and the ideas that him and Malcolm had written about 2009, 2008, you know, before the Black Ice album. And so Malcolm was there with her. He was everywhere. He was in the songs. He was in the room. We knew he was. I mean, and we're not spiritual guys at all. But Malcolm Young was a very strong character. You know, and I don't think he'd think that passion would get in the way of that, you know. And it certainly felt like that to us. And, you know, and I think in the songs in the album, you can tell we're just having a time of our life.
You from AC/DC, this is My Planet Rocks with Brian Johnson. Now, I can't believe it's already 6 years since Rock or Bust came out. And I can remember before it came out, there was that whole online excitement, unconfirmed rumours about the return of the band. You get the cheeky online photos, the Pat photos, sighting rumours and so on.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like the same as that with this album. Now, it seems as a band, you often get referred to as very private, almost secretive. Is that a fair comment, or do you just not have anything to say until you feel you've got something to say?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wouldn't say secretive, but I would just say we like to be, you know, we don't want to join in with all the nonsense on social media and stuff like that. And but we do, you know, we're just not that kind of people, you know. I don't know. But you're right in a way. When one thing, it's not worth saying anything unless you've got something to say. And if you've got something to say, it's usually about your music, your fans, rock and roll. And hopefully this, record will get young kids playing rock and roll again. And I think that's what we need. No offense against anybody else, because everybody that's out there are very talented people. It's just too much of it, too much of the same. When Malcolm started this band many, many years ago, and he founded it, he said, and he just said, there's too much soft music knocking around. There's too much of it. And that's basically why he wanted to start AC/DC. And he got Angus in with him and said, right, this is what we're going to do. And he was uncompromising. He never wavered from what AC/DC should sound like, the kind of song they should sing. It should never be too serious. It should always have some kind of tongue-in-cheek. If you're alluding to any subject, you should never be too serious. And above everything else, never get mixed up in politics.
More from our double length My Planet Rocks with Brian Johnson from AC/DC after this. Welcome back to My Planet Rocks with my guest this week, Brian Johnson. It's the same studio lineup as 2014's Rock or Bust. What was it like being in the studio together again with so many different personal musical journeys happening since, both together and separately as well?
Well, first of all, I thought this is just impossible. I don't know how this could happen. And I was just so thankful. But as soon as we walked in, Wyatt, it was just this. Everybody had a smile on their face. Everybody was so happy to be back together. That electricity that was in the air, and it was, there was Phil looking healthy and great, and there was Cliff smiling, and all the lads, Angus with Stevie just sitting over the table having a cup of tea, laughing, talking what we'd been doing, and then in comes Brendan O'Brien. Okay, let's fire this stuff up, and it was brilliant. Just to see Phil behind the drums again, and the boys, and just firing up and getting warmed up, and it's pretty a unique sound that the boys knock out, and it's fabulous to be able to sing with them again, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hell out of it, mate. It was great.
Does Brendan let Phil have a cigarette while he's playing? Has he still got a fag hanging out his mouth?
Well, no, I'm not going to sneak and snitch here, but a couple, when we first got there, we were all very, very good boys, and we all went outside onto the fire escape stairs to have a fag, as we call it. Well, we'll have a fag, we'll have a quick fag. But everybody wants to be a paparazzi now, and it was out there. What are they doing here? You can't keep anything quiet these days. And so we put a big sheet up. We put this huge sheet like a sail so we could hide behind it. I mean, it was pitiful. It was like having a cigarette behind a school toilet, at a boys' toilet. It's, And then I think Phil would have had a couple of cheeky ones while he was playing. Because he's behind his own little thing, hitting the drums. I'm sure he had a couple of little sneaky ones. He doesn't look the same without a cigarette hanging out the side of his mouth.
I'm Wyatt. This is My Planet Rocks with my guest, AC/DC's Brian Johnson. I'm guessing the album title Power Up isn't just a title, but a statement of intent. I mean, if it was going to be like your farewell album, it'd probably be called Power Down.
Yeah. No, it certainly is. It came from Angus just said, he said, whenever we get together and we plug in the amps, we plug in the guitars and we just turn it up, it's, you're powering up the band, you're powering up the music, and I thought it was a brilliant title. Usually we have a title that is one of the song's titles, but this title, it was just a different thing. And I think it's particularly, at this time in this pandemic, I think it's very suitable to put that.
Appropriate.
Yeah, it's perfect. Just for pick me up, you know.
Are you one of these bands that when you're recording, you record, I don't know, 20, 25 odd songs, then whittle it down to the final dozen or so of the album? Or do you know the 12 you're going to do, record them, and that's it?
No, there was 12, and that's what we recorded. And Brendan was explaining to me when I was sent to him, I said, some of these songs aren't as long as they usually are. And he said, nope. He said, it's not going to be. He said, I want people to be knocked out, you know, bang, 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 every song, you know, to the end of the album, just non-stop, hitting you every time, and it does just that. I think he's Brendan O'Brien brings something in there which is more than just technical production work. He brings in a positiveness. He's a brilliant musician. You got to understand. He brings a lot to the table, and he can understand the musicians. He can try things in different keys to see if they work, and he's just a great guy to be there. He's one of the boys, you know.
Planet Rock. Brian Johnson is my guest this week. Now, obviously, over the last few years, you yourself have had plenty of time to look at your career and reflect about what's next, and you've come back. Do you ever feel a sense of responsibility carrying this iconic rock brand across the universe? I mean, in all honesty, there are very few bands that make such a big statement with their presence as AC/DC do in the rock and metal world. It's like, where else is happening in the world, musically, culturally, politically? AC/DC are here, they mean business, and everything's going to be a bit better.
Well, thanks for saying that. I mean, that's such a nice compliment. And you know, being a part of the band, sometimes it's hard to look in on yourself and just say, I'm part of that. You know, as I say, we're not on social media, a lot of us, in fact, not all the band really, and so it's hard to digest. You know, I mean, the other day in London, I was driving past in a cab, and there was AC/DC written on the roof of St. Paul's Cathedral. I went, what the hell is that? And it was funny because I felt so far removed from it because I didn't even know it was there, you know. And then after that, somebody else came and said, there's a huge lightning bolt on the south bank of the Thames. It's massive. And I went, is it? I didn't know it was there. You know, we're just one of them bands that, how do you know what? It's hard to explain. We just get on with it. You know, we talk to each other and just going, how you doing? And it's only when it comes to a time like this where, you know, I'm talking to you, Wyatt, and I'll talk to a few other people and, you know, from the press and the things around the world, that it finally hammers it home to you. You suddenly realize this is, you know, you're right. We don't think it's as important as it is, but it obviously must mean something. And if it does, well, boy, I'm pretty proud of that, as we all should be, you know, the band.
Yeah, well, at least you're not getting complacent and big-headed as you get older. There's always that.
No, never. No, never. I don't think I've ever met a bunch of people that you can get AC/DC in one room and 5 people, and I don't think you'll ever get another bunch of 5 people that are so grounded, who really don't care. Whether it be Steve, who's just so thrilled, Stevie Young, that he's just found the cheapest pizza in town. Yeah, now. Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I just went in the corner, down the corner, around the corner. Brilliant. $3.50. Yeah. But it's true. I mean, you know, and he'll go for walks 10 mile before coming to the studio, just walking. You know, it's just I don't know, it's just a bunch of regular guys who shouldn't be that regular, maybe is what you're saying, but it's, you know, you feel comfortable. You know, you always feel comfortable with the boys. You feel uncomfortable at big dues. That's why you'll not see us at, you know, every award. You know, some guys will go at the opening of a letter. But well, you won't find us there. Yeah, thank God.
Do you think it's easier or harder for Stevie because he's got family with him, but he's had to replace Malcolm, so he's in. I mean, between the rock and a hard sea.
Hey, listen, Stevie has always been part of the family and all that, and he was always when he was younger, he was in a little band called Starfighters and all that, and he was always around Malcolm. You know, they were family, and you know, and he studied Malcolm, not like a like a pupil teacher yet kind of thing. He was a young, and they all made music, all the kids, and he worked hard at it, and he still works harder. I mean, I've seen Stevie, you know, at the studio when we're doing the things, so he can get it just right. He'll be up till about 4 a.m. listening to what he has to do the next day, and he works so hard at it. And so I tip my hat to him. I mean, he's done a brilliant job.
New from AC/DC, this is My Planet Rocks with Brian Johnson. Well, we know the world's in a completely weird and strange place at the moment, but do you know what the skeleton plan is for the band for, say, the next 6 to 18 months, pending changes worldwide?
Well, you know, when we were in Holland and we rehearsed for 3 weeks, you know, testing out the ears and everything, the new ears, and you know, we talk like people do, and the rehearsals were going so well. I mean, it really, we were just smiling, going, oh boy, it's still there. And it was the talk obviously went to doing some shows. We weren't talking about touring. All we wanted to talk about was, you know, doing some live shows. Let's see, you know, let's have some fun, and see where we are. And of course, we went home, and it was about 3 days later, and then somebody else's virus was our virus. You know, you thought it was it's not gonna. How could it spread that far? But boy, oh boy, it just took me all by surprise. It was lightning, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, does that make you think that whenever that may be, you can get out and about? Would you do select shows? Would you do one of your big, huge tours again?
I don't think we'd do a big, huge tour. As Cliff said last time, you know, it was too long, and it just went on forever, that tour. I mean, you know, it was too long, and we needed to stop earlier, but we didn't. But the thing is, you know, this time I think what we'll do is do select shows, have some fun. You know, I'd like to see we do some festivals, you know, and stuff like that, and big gigs. You know, would love to do them, but not to write it down and this is what you're doing for the next 16 months of your life. This is where you're going. I think that could be daunting to anyone, you know, especially in times like these, you know. And so we just got to be a little careful and not try to second guess ourselves too much, you know, because you can't plan to plan. I mean, you know, you can't even plan a plan anymore.
Another whole hour of My Planet Rocks with Brian Johnson coming up after this. My Planet Rocks with my guest this week, Brian Johnson. Now, obviously, as we get older, we naturally get more sentimental. So based on that, over the years, have you ever been tempted to do a power ballad or a straight-up ballad?
It's funny. I was listening to somebody told us this. So you got to watch Netflix. There's this program on called Religious Somethings or Other, and there was this song that I sang in 1972 with the band Geordie, and it was called "Oh Lord," and that was about as close to a power ballad as I think I've ever been. Or House of the Rising Sun that I did with Geordie, that was in Hangman, the movie. And I don't know how they got those songs. They were just forgotten on B-sides of records and stuff. But I think on this new album, one of my favorite songs is Through the Mists of Time, which is a wonderful, you got to remember this album is a tribute to Malcolm Young. That's the first and foremost thing. And that's why we were so, buzzed when we did it, and always knew that he was kind of looking over our shoulder. And when Angus came with his song, and I thought the lyrics were just absolutely spot on, and it was just really the lyrics of when we were younger in the rock and the AC/DC in the young days, the early 80s, when it was just carefree. We had a brilliant time, and then AIDS came along, and then the digital revolution came along with everybody's got cell phones and everybody wants to, film their breakfast and then show it to a friend. I just ate that. Would you like to see it? And that's what people do now. They're fascinated with taking pictures of a time, all right, 20 years ago. Look at a photograph. 20 years. Not something you took yesterday afternoon. This was my pint. This was my pint of beer yesterday. It just goes on and on and on. And these were wonderful times. These were carefree times. And I think Angus just nailed it on this song. And it's one of my favorites. And I wouldn't say it was a power ballad, but it's different. I think you can tell there's a lot of feeling, a lot of heartfelt singing in that, it's one to keep an eye on that one.
You from AC/DC, this is My Planet Rocks with Brian Johnson. The big 40th anniversary of Back in Black this year.
Yes.
Do you still have any of those sliding door moments about wondering where you might have ended up if Bon Scott had lived? And has the answer changed over the years as you got older?
No, I remember I was in a car with my friend when the radio went on and said, and today Bon Scott, the singer with the AC/DC, was found dead in the back of a car, and I went, oh, no, you gotta be kidding me. In the little rock band I was in Newcastle, we did, a whole lot of Rosie and Highway to Hell. We finished the set with it because everybody went crazy for it. And it was just awful, and I just went, oh, Jesus, this is up, And it wasn't until about 2 weeks later I got a telephone call because I was off the radar from the first band I was in. I was way off the radar. And I was 32 years old. It was, in them days, I was way too old.
Pensioner then.
No bother. Mine, I didn't realise Bon was 32. And, and so the whole thing of joining is well documented, getting through there and seeing the boys. And I just sang 2 songs with them. That was it. I don't know, there was something explosive happened there in here that was just an unexplained mystery. You can't figure it. Nobody's that smart. It's there or it isn't. And so that was another story. And then going to the Bahamas. I'd never been to the Bahamas. I mean, I didn't even know where the hell it was. And, we got there, and I think at the time I had 2 T-shirts, 1 pair of jeans, 1 pair of sneakers, and a denim jacket. That was it. And that's how I went out to do Back in Black. I didn't have much money, and I just remember being one of the happiest times I think I've had in my life. Working with listening to these guys fire up, and just going, by God, these guys are good. And meeting Mutt Langer, the producer, who was just brilliant, and he understood how anxious I may be, which is a nice way of being scared. And, well, I was worried, I was going, well, I'm in at the deep end here. There was no way out. I'd only been officially in the band for about 3 weeks or something. And here I was out there, and it just went like a blur. That's all I remember. And I was only there 6 weeks and went home, and there was a gap of about 6 weeks where I never heard a thing. And I was going, well, that didn't work, did it? Obviously. But of course, the guys were furiously trying to put this thing together in time. And the next thing I knew, I got a big envelope with the vinyl record in it. And that was the end of that. When I heard that, I just said, "Oh, that's pretty good," and the rest is history. It's just been brilliant.
Stay right there. More Brian Johnson on My Planet Rocks after this. Welcome back to My Planet Rocks with my guest this week, Brian Johnson. Well, something that you might be able to help settle once and for all. AC/DC, are they a British or an Australian band?
Not touching that one.
I thought if I'm getting the Brit, I'll get you committed.
Well, he has the truth. He has the truth of the matter. Cliff Williams was born in, I think, Romford. I was born in Newcastle. Malcolm and Angus and Bon were all born in Scotland. Phil was definitely Australian. He was Melbourne. And but Malcolm and Angus and Bon all went to Australia when they were about 5 or 6 or something like that, or 7, and joined the big emigration, the big family emigration thing. And so they lived there. They went to school there. That accent's, it's like this little. It's Australian with a little Scottish lilt in it, Yeah. And so if you said to any Australian that they were half English, you wouldn't make it far out the pub. You just wouldn't get out the pub. You wouldn't. And I mean, they call it akadaka, which is a lovely Australian thing. It's just what they call it now, akadaka, mate.
Yeah.
And so, that's spiritually and naturalized diddly Australian. I would say you would have to say that. Otherwise I get my head kicked in.
Well, I'm glad we've settled that. They're a British band then.
Oh, God.
Yeah, well, on diplomatic grounds, we'll say you're a band of the people and leave it there.
A British band of the British Empire, matey. Oh, just.
I'm Wyatt. This is My Planet Rocks with my guest, AC/DC's Brian Johnson. Something I've always wondered, to the nearest year, if you know, when were you last seen or photographed without a hat or helmet on?
Oh, well, I wear them, for things like this. When I'm home in Florida, I mean, I'm just one of the boys swimming and plodging about and having a good time. But the hat thing started. I'll never forget. I used to play the working men's clubs in around the northeast of England, and we would really rock. It was a grand little rock band called Geordie 2. And I used to sweat because they didn't have any air conditioning. And, and in the winter especially, the clubs were full and they'd have the heating full up because it was freezing outside. And I always used to sweat that, and my hair and all the sweat used to go in my eyes and sting like a... And my brother Morris was there one night. He was there and he was sitting and he had just got himself a sports car. And he bought, God bless him, he bought one of them sports car caps, the little caps. And it was, we were halfway through the set and I was sitting having a beer with him and he said, your eyes are red. I said, I know, it's all a sweat, mate. He said, yeah, put this on. And I said, I'll try it. And I put it on because in the north of England, everybody wore caps, after the war and all that. It was a kind of uniform for the Geordies and Yorkshiremen and people like that, you know. And I wore it the second half, and I went, that's marvellous. It's brilliant. I said, I'm going to buy one of them. And I remember I said to him, I said, here, thanks, mate. And he went, I seen the state of it. It was soaking. It looked like like a cow pat in a field. It was just done. Well done. And he says, you can keep that. I'm not putting that on. So I did. And then people started remembering, and it's a good band. Oh, you know, the singer that wears the cap, him. And then straight away we got instant recognition with things like that, and we got gigs, we got shows. When we want that group, what are they called? You know, the singer wears the cap. Oh, right, yeah. Geordie too. Yep. And it's stuck and all of that, and I guess it's just part of us now. And you know, it's when I don't want anybody to know who I am, I take it off. Nobody knows who I am. They can. Where's that? Wait, where's that? You know, what's he? Are you a member, sir? I put my hat on. Oh, hello, Brian. Are you all right?
New from AC/DC, this is My Planet Rocks with Brian Johnson. Did Angus ever consider dropping a school uniform once he got past college or university age? 'Cause I'm thinking around like the For Those About to Rock here, he's in his mid-20s. Did he ever get to a point thinking, this could look a bit weird when I get to my 30s and beyond? Or was it always, nope, we're doing this forever?
No, it was just that. He's doing it forever. And if he didn't do it, honestly, I'd be disappointed. This thing happens, you see, Wyatt. This thing happens. Angus always said he's got 3 personalities. There's him, who's very quiet, sits at home, you know, he's a quiet lad, he does his thing, does his music, and that's it. There's the Angus that picks the guitar up and just turns into this musician, just writer, just concentration. And then the third one is when he sticks his school uniform on. And I've seen it, and it's tangible. He goes into the back, he'll go, yeah, you know, and he's sitting there, you know, and out he comes, like Clark Kent, out of the telephone booth.
Yeah.
He's just this totally switched on, you know, bright-eyed, you know, laser sharp, twitching, ready, come on, right, let's go. You know, he's, you know, and I don't think he could even contemplate going on without that uniform, and neither could I, and neither could the audience. And I think it's just an integral part of the band, and all the little nuances in our band that make it different. The cap, the uniform, Phil with a ciggy in his mouth. You know, it's just all of that thing that make people go, it's the boys. You know. Yeah. And it's strange, just little silly little things like that make something solid and, you know, and recognizable and safe and comfortable and lovely, you know.
And long may it continue. And finally, I've got Newcastle United tip for relegation this year. What say you?
Rotten swine. By the way, I think I've got 10 quid on that as well, but never mind. Now we'll fight through.
Listen, I wish you every success with the brand new album and look forward to finally seeing you back on a stage with the boys in whatever year that may be.
Okay, thank you, Wyatt, my son, and we will be there, don't you worry. You know.
Thank you so much for that, Brian. God bless.
Thank you, mate. Bye-bye now.
That was our 2-hour My Planet Rocks with Brian Johnson from AC/DC. The new album, Power Up, is out now.